Certainly we have been having a time in worship today. And the Spirit of the Lord is in this place. We have seen much today, and we thank God. As I paid attention to worship and listened to the Spirit, I am acutely aware more and more just how African we as a people really are.
Well,
and that there is no America without us.
say it.
And I had a crazy idea. And y'all pray for me because y'all know when I get crazy ideas. But maybe we need to invite Governor DeSantis and Governor Youngkin
Come on.
to learn about what they're trying to outlaw. You saw them dancers? Those are African moves. But you also saw the origins of square dancing, the rounds, and other kinds of American dance. You heard the beating of the African drum, which is the basis of not only the blues, but rock and roll. There is no Elvis without Big Mama Thornton.
Come on.
And so maybe they need to come to church and learn something before they start trying to outlaw it. Y'all pray for me because that's just a crazy idea. All right, let me get to what I'm supposed to be doing today. Let's stand for the reading of the word. As we conclude this series on the value of the invisible, I want to attract your attention to the book of Genesis, the 40th chapter. And there we'll find in verses 20 through 23 our sermonic footing. Once again, that's the book of beginnings, Genesis chapter 40, verses 20 through 23. Hear now the lesson for the day. On the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he hanged, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Thus ends the reading of the word. Amen. I want to talk just for a few moments from the subject, forgotten but still favored. Forgotten, but still favored. Counted among the saddest stories of the entire Bible is the story of Joseph. I'm not talking about Joseph, the surrogate father of Jesus, but Joseph, the son of Jacob. That Joseph, which had the favoritism of his father symbolized in a coat of many colors. Joseph, who was despised and hated by his brothers because of his ability to forecast the future in dreams. That Joseph, which was sold into Egyptian bondage by his own siblings. Joseph, who goes down into Egypt and finds favor with Pharaoh's chief military officer and begins to rise in the ranks. Potiphar's wife takes a liking to him, and he does a bid in the joint for a crime that he did not commit. He's accused of sexual harassment and violation of women, which he did not do. And while in prison, he encounters two of Pharaoh's trusted standard bearers, the wine taster or the cupbearer, who would taste the wine before it was given to the king to ensure that it had not been poisoned. And likewise, the baker, who was responsible for preparing the meals for Pharaoh to make sure that they again were not tainted. They found themselves out of favor with Pharaoh, and they did time with Joseph in the joint. And they were disturbed, and they come to this young Hebrew boy in jail who interprets for them their dreams. And Joseph tells the cupbearer that he will be restored to his position, but the baker will have his head lifted and placed on a pole and will become the food for crows. Text says that after Joseph interprets the dreams, sure enough, they come to pass just as Joseph had predicted. The cupbearer is restored to his function in the palace, and the baker is decapitated. And the text says that life went on for the cupbearer. He had been given a blessing by the young Jewish dream interpreter. And then, after having made a promise, I'll tell Pharaoh about you when I get out, the text renders this indictment, this tragic near conclusion to the story of a life filled with promise. They forgot about Joseph. He was forgotten. For all that he had done, he was forgotten. For all that he had promised, he was forgotten. For all that he had delivered, he was forgotten. And life went on in the palace, but Joseph was left to languish in prison. He was forgotten. Notice the scene here. Pharaoh throws a party and life goes on. There's revelry in the palace. There's sadness in the cell. There's festivities going on in Pharaoh's court, but there is a level of frustration and deflation felt in jail because Joseph has been forgotten. And I submit to you today, beloved, that sometimes we are guilty of what this cupbearer is guilty of, the crime of forgetting. Life goes on, yet sometimes we forget some folks on the journey who have been with us and who have sustained us. We simply forget them. Have you ever been forgotten? Overlooked for a promotion, and you've worked on a job for years and you know you're qualified, but you get forgotten. Have you ever been forgotten where you've been a patient in the hospital and your insurance is just as good as somebody else's insurance? However, you don't get the same treatment as other patients? Just simply forgotten. And I would submit to you this morning, beloved, that it is a sin against nature to forget those who have come before you and forget those who help you along the way. Here, Joseph is forgotten. He's not remembered. He's neglected. He's overlooked. And thereby he is rendered invisible. Where the scene of action is the palace, but the forgotten ones are left incarcerated in jail. And sometimes I tell you, we have the tendency to forget. We forget the seniors. We forget our young ones. We forget single mothers. We forget children who are trying. We forget teachers and frontline workers. We just simply forget as we are engaged in the ongoing activity of life. Joseph was forgotten. Forgotten in a rotten, stinky, dark, funky jail cell in Egypt. And beloved, there is a class of citizens that we in America too often neglect and forget. We forget our prisoners. And we treat them as if they are problems to be solved, statistics rather than persons, and we simply forget them. Life goes on in our streets. We throw our parties. We have our festive church services, but we neglect those who are behind prison bars. In fact, when I was growing up as a child, and it was standard in every Baptist church doing devotion, that some deacon would pray for those who are behind prison walls. And we don't even pray for those who are now incarcerated. We treat them as an anathema, as if their crime has rendered them invisible and less than human. And as this nation becomes a carceral state that is hell-bent on putting black and brown bodies, male and female, behind prison walls, we cannot afford to forget. For you see, beloved, those who are behind prison walls are not just statistics. They're not just problems. They're people. And because this nation puts more people behind jail than any industrial nation in the world, and because we have a penchant for putting black and brown bodies away, those of us who sit in pews that are ebony colored on Sunday mornings must remember those that are incarcerated, because that's Uncle Jojo. That's my mama. Those are our aunts, our uncles, and our fathers, and yet we forget them as if they are non-persons. What happens to those that are incarcerated? Do we remember their families and their struggles and the plight that a period of incarceration imposes on a family dynamic and structure? What happens to the child whose father is behind closed doors, who does not have a father figure? What happens to the girl whose mother is strung out on drugs and has to do a stint in the joint, and she has no maternal role model? Those Christmases where daddy is absent, it's a constant reminder of a moral failure. And yet, life goes on. Joseph was forgotten. But beloved, praise be to God that though Joseph may have been forgotten by the cupbearer, he was still favored by God. And I'm here to tell you that though you may be forgotten, though you may have struggled to be reintegrated into society as a returning citizen, though you may have had your voting rights taken from you, you are still favored by God. Forgotten by people, but favored by God. Praise be to God that when folks overlook us, there's still a God that sits high and looks low and sees us struggling to be human, striving to be our best selves, working on getting better at every turn. Praise be to God that when folk overlook me, there's a God that still sees me and recognizes me as one of his children. Forgotten, but still favored. So, beloved, if we look at this story, there are three ways that I want to show you how Joseph was favored. Hopefully it will stick in our consciousness and transform us in the moment so that we might become more sensitive to those who are returning, to those that we have forgotten, to those uncles and fathers and nephews and brothers and mothers and aunties that we are letting rot and go to waste behind bars. The first way that Joseph, beloved, was favored was that he had history. Joseph had some history because he was a dreamer. And Joseph's dream capacity for dreaming was really the continuation of his father's ability to dream. You do remember Jacob, don't you? Who had a dream one night in a dusty plain where there was a ladder descending from ascending to heaven, and angels were going up and down, and he named the place Bethel, the house of God. Joseph's daddy, Jacob, had the capacity to dream. And I want you to know, beloved, that if ever you feel forgotten, neglected, and left out, you are part of a people with the capacity to dream. For when you have an encounter with God, whenever you meet the divine personality, you can look at your circumstances and yet see a brighter day ahead. You got the capacity to dream. And praise be to God that we come from a people often neglected, but we could dream beyond our present circumstances. We could dream of schools in slavery when literacy was outlawed. We could dream of education as a source of uplift for the race. We could dream of visible churches when we had to shout in brush harbors. We could dream that glory would one day come while marching down the streets with dogs turned loose on us and water hoses sprayed on us. We could dream. And your ability to dream is not unique to you, but it is the continuation of history. You are a dreamer because you come from dreamers. You are one that can look at the worst of humanity and the worst of circumstances and say there's a better day coming. Joseph was favored because he had history. And Joseph was also favored because he was able to hold on to his humanity. For you see, there is a tendency to render people who are incarcerated as less than human, and we lift up their crime as if it is the defining moment to their existence. But we forget what Brian Stevenson has told us: we are all more than the worst thing that we've ever done. And so Joseph was able to hold on to his humanity, because even though Joseph was behind bars, he knew that he still had a gift that came from God. When nobody else could interpret dreams, Joseph knew how to get in contact with the holy and tell you what was coming down the line. Joseph had a sense that God, even though he was behind closed doors, behind prison walls, had a gift that had come from the Father. And Joseph, as an adroit administrator who everything he touched turned to gold, unlike anything that we've ever seen, the inmates started running to prison. Y'all don't see God at work. The incarcerated became the bailiff. And then everything was placed in Joseph's hands. And I'm here to tell you that if you can rely on the gift that God has given you, no matter how bad it gets, there's still a way out, because God has already given you what you need to get out and to get up. Somebody here ought to help me, because if you've ever found yourself in with your back against the wall, you know how to get out of some bad situations. Anybody here ever had more bill than they had money, but you had a way of making a way out of no way? Anybody here ever had a family to feed, but only a few cans, but you knew how to take that Spam and some thickening and make a full meal, and you knew how to get full on cornbread? Anybody here ever know how to take a bad situation and make it a good situation? That's because you had a gift that came from the divine. And praise be to God, no matter what we think of those who are returning, and no matter what we think of those who are still on vacation, they have gifts that God has given. And you need to know that whatever God has given you, God will never take it back. The third thing that I see in this Joseph story is that Joseph is forgotten but still favored because he has history. He holds on to his humanity, but then Joseph has help. The text says throughout the Joseph narrative that the Lord was with Joseph. Some of y'all should shout right there that the Lord is with Joseph. You think that God only goes to the holiest of places, but God was already in jail. We sometimes think that some places are off limits to the divine, but the Bible says that the Lord was with Joseph, and wherever Joseph went, God was right there. That's good news for somebody today, because you're going through hell and high water, but I want you to know that the Lord is with you. If you are a child of the Most High King, the Lord is with you. If you've been abandoned by your parents, the Lord is with you. If you can't find a good job, the Lord is with you. If you've gotten a bad diagnosis from a doctor, the Lord is with you. If you can't find your way clear, the Lord is with you. Somebody ought to shout right here, because I know I'm preaching. And if you won't shout, I'll shout my own self. Because when I rose this morning, I did not have any doubt that the Lord was with me. He's with me when I'm right, and he's with me when I'm wrong. He's with me when I'm up, and he's with me when I'm down. He's with me when everything is right, and when the bottom falls out, he's still with me. Because there is a certain kind of viscosity that comes with the divine. And viscosity simply means that the something sticks. Let me see if I can't give you an illustration. The other day, I tried to take a picture off of the wall in my office, and I couldn't dismount it or dislodge it from its location. And when I was able to pull back the picture just a little bit from the wall to peer beneath, I saw that whoever had put up the picture, it had double taped it. Which means that it had tape on both sides. Tape was stuck to the picture, but tape was also stuck to the wall. Now, if y'all are thinking, that right there is your moment for shout, because that's what the Lord does with each and every one of the divine children. We stick to God, but God, I can't get nothing out of y'all today, so I'm gonna stop preaching, but he sticks with us. God is with us, and God is with us indeed. Wherever I am, the Lord is with me. That's the way it was with Jacob, and that's why I'm favored. Because yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, behold, thou art with me. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, because the Lord is with me. Even when the wicked came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell, for the Lord is with me. I hear Jesus say, lo, I'm with you, even to the end of the age. The Lord and as long as he sticks to me, I know I got some help on the way. He may not come when you want him, but help is on the way. Forgotten, but still favored. Forgotten, but still favored. I got some help, and my help is on the way. I'm still human, and I got a history. And so whenever you are forgotten, just remember, you're still favored. And eventually, it works out. Joseph gets out of jail, comes to Pharaoh, who's tormented with his dreams, rises to the ranks of prime minister of all of Egypt. Famine comes, and here comes his brothers with swollen and empty bellies. They don't recognize their brother, but what Joseph understood was what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Because I got help, because I'm double stuck. I'm stuck to God, and God is stuck to me. Somebody here may decide that they want to decide now for Jesus. We extend the invitation to Christian discipleship for those who would want to come. Acknowledge your need for help. Acknowledge that your humanity comes as a gift from the divine, and that God is still working in your personal story, past, present, and future. You got a history. Even if DeSantos and Youngkin say you've never done anything worth studying or never done anything commendable or worthwhile, God is still helping. So if you need some help today, somewhere on your journey, you recognize that you can't make it on this low ground of sorrow by yourself, we invite you to just simply surrender yourself to the divine and let God help you along the way. If there are those in the building who are disturbed in their spirit and sense that you won't find rest till you find rest in God, as Augustine said, then we encourage you to come down the aisle right now. And for those that are watching online or listening on the phone or whatever means by which you have connected with the Mount Olive Church today, we extend that same invitation to you. There is a number at the bottom of the screen you can call, and there's someone waiting right now to hear your testimony that I may have been forgotten, but God still favors me. So we extend the invitation in this moment. For those of you who have prayer requests, you can send those into the chat and we will pray for those at the appropriate moment. But this now is the moment of decision. Who in their right mind will follow Jesus?